Well, today is Saturday, September 15th, I think. Hold on. Yeah, September 15th, 2018. And the weather is good. This is Radisson Hotel in Kitchener, Ontario. So my car is somewhere over there under the lower level. And I'm just about to leave the hotel. And today I wanted to go to Toronto and do some photography, but I know nobody watches these videos, so instead we're gonna go and do a quick tour, but with a twist, kind of like a history tour, where you will see what I saw 21 years ago on August 18th, 1997. But first I gotta get coffee. All right, one upside down Americano, and one venti water with light ice. And if you have to ask what a upside down Americano is, you probably have not watched this channel for very long, because that's my favorite drink. But anyway, before we move out, this is Kitchener. I love this place. There's a new movie theater over here, and they opened this, Starbucks, and it's humongous inside. Normally in a movie theater they're not very good, but this is because it's a brand new one. There's so much room and there's no people. Like, it's so quiet. You go there, you can sip coffee, play with your computer. Yeah, lots of parking over here, And of course, this being Saturday morning, no people at all. Look at this, some two old guys sitting there shooting breeze. But anyway, a little bit of history. I covered this long time ago. It was like a paid video, and then it disappeared because that company for some reason stopped taking the money from, I don't know, it was like a website I was using. I forgot what it's called, but basically you upload the file there and then they take care of distribution and uploading. But anyway, our story begins in 1995 in Moscow, Russia, where I'm running a two-man real estate operation as an independent broker. And I got some experience as a real estate agent, basically renting apartments. And because I spoke English, I gradually shifted towards expat market, as they were called, like expats, people from US, I don't know, France, Germany, whoever was coming to Moscow to open a rep offices, right? So they were first they were looking for apartments, like the big bosses were looking for apartments, and what I realized is that they were always looking for big apartments, so the commission was big, and we charged them, it was I made a lot of money. And they always say that it's easier to make money in the country where you're born. So if you cannot make money in the country where you're born, it's a mistake to think that somewhere else you'll be making more money if you move to a different country. And so I had no illusions whatsoever about Canada. I knew that I would have to work, extremely hard. But back to the story. When I was a broker, I had no clue what to do, because I was not too happy with the actual business, because it was boring, and I'm a very, as you know, probably I'm a very creative person. I need some excitement, and real estate, it was, everything day in day out was the same, right? Like, find a space, go see it, find a property, and then go see it or don't see it, because nobody, like, it was a very easygoing market back then. Like, there was no exclusive contracts anyway. But the Moscow itself, it was so huge, so much traffic, so much crime. There's no rules, everybody's on the take, like cops, there's no tickets, they stop, it's all cash, it's like, I did not like that. And so I had money. When I switched to the office market, on the suggestion of an American friend, they said, why don't you try, you know, like dealing with office properties instead of apartments? Like until then I was dealing with big apartments. And then I tried that, and at first I tried it with the Russian customers. It did not work. And then I thought, wait a second, I'm good working with Americans, you know, with the French, with Germans, like basically using this little English language newspaper for advertising. It was called Moscow Times. Moscow Times. It was a free newspaper distributed in all hotels, all, you know, international businesses, and it had a classified section. And that's, in those days, that's all you had to do. I was running one ad in Moscow Times saying that, you know, apartments and office space for rent, and my phone number, and then I was running a similar ad, but in Russian, in the Russian newspaper Izvestia, saying that American businessmen are looking for apartments and office space to rent, right? And then Russian owners of the property would call me, and, you know, something they want to rent. And so it was like, that's it. That's the whole marketing strategy, and it worked. But then, of course, later the market became saturated. But anyway, so I was not happy with this work, even though the money was good, but it was boring. And then one day I'm showing an office space to a girl from a UK British travel agency, and she's a travel agent herself, but she speaks English and Russian, and usually that's what they did, you know, the foreigners, as we call them, right? Expats at first, you know, when they were looking for office space, because they knew that they would be dealing with a Russian broker, so at first they would send their Russian assistant to check out the space, right, the property. So then if the assistant says it's cool, then the big boss probably would send his own English, you know, like another assistant but higher level. There was like, that's why many Russian agencies did not like dealing with expats, because it involved so much work. Like you had to show the same property like 3, 4, 5 times. But you know, I'm a very patient guy, and I knew the money was at the end, like there was a light at the end of the tunnel, usually big money, right, like the commission, and it worked. But so this girl shows up, and I still remember her name was Laura, and we start chatting. I showed her a couple of properties. We're driving around in my Lada 2106 Zhiguli, bought brand new. It was 6,000 US. I still remember, 6,000 US. 4-speed manual transmission, 62 horsepower. Oh boy. But my customers loved that car, you know, because to them they could not believe. One guy says, what, they still make them new? I said, yeah, you have $6 grand, just go ahead and buy it. There's no lineup, no waiting, nothing. Because before, you know, it was very difficult to buy a car in Russia. You had to wait in line. But then, of course, when all this capitalism started, you know, when they allowed private enterprises, because before it was not allowed, so all kinds of companies started popping up everywhere, and some of them, you know, that's what they were selling cars, right? And I remember I bought my car. These guys, what they did, they just rented a stadium. Like they rented a part of a stadium, which probably had no business, and so they were using a stadium, like a, you know, like a football stadium, like Russian football, soccer, to sell cars. And so they just had cars on the field, and they had office in the somewhere in the one of those premises that athletes would use to change clothes, you know. Jesus. But anyway, so I meet this girl, and she says, you speak so, you know, such good English, what are you still doing in Russia, you know? And I said, where would I go? What do you mean? And she says, well, I have me and my sister Mary, we basically shooting for Canada. We're trying to immigrate to Canada, but if you want to go with us, you know, you help us with the English, and we'll help you, we'll tell you what paperwork is required. You know, I never thought about Canada until then, and then they kind of like dropped this, you know, info, right? And I started thinking about this, and then yeah, eventually we went to the embassy of Canada in Moscow, because then I always wanted to make it legal. You know, I didn't want to go to Canada like a tourist and then pretend and then stay, you know. I wanted to have proper papers so I can find a job right away, like no issues with cops or something, right? And so back then, and some people are still asking why I did not go to US. And of course, US would be better because there's much more work. Like now as a trucker, if I was in US, I would be making much more money. But the thing is, what a lot of Americans don't realize, how difficult it is to legally immigrate to US of A. And so I was looking at Canada, and so US was out of the question. They didn't have any programs where you could, you know, apply and just, hey, I want to live in US. It does not happen like that, you know. Unless you're like a famous athlete or actor, or you have like $2 million to invest and you come as an investor. It's basically, I know some people did that. Like I met a few guys. Like one guy, I said, how did you come to US from Netherlands? He says he married a girl that he met online, like Match.com. He married a girl, American, and he came to US. You know, like easy. I hope that marriage was legitimate, by the way. Then other people, they go to school. They come to school in US, right? They come as students. They go to university. And then they get, when you're a student, you get a driver's license, you know, you get your social security, social insurance number. And then they just dropped off the grid, you know. They either they don't graduate, or they graduate and then they try to find a job, but nobody's looking for them, right? So that's, or they just come as tourists and they just stay behind, you know. But I didn't want to do that. And Canada was one of the few countries that back then was actively recruiting young, educated people. So they had a point system, and you get points based on your, like, for each section on that application, based on your age, your education, do you speak English, like what kind of job do you intend to get in Canada. And back, that's the beauty, you didn't even have to have any job guarantees from Canada, right? So like some places, like now, you would have to show that you have a job already waiting for you in Canada. But back then, it was all kind of like theoretical. You want to, all you have to do is just prove that you can do one of the approved occupations, right? Like they had a list of like 20 or 30 occupations that's what they were looking for. They were looking for people that have experience in those 30 fields, 30 jobs, and that was the only way to pass that kind of like application process. And one of the jobs on that list back then was translator, interpreter, right? And I'm a teacher of English by education, and so I did work as translator, like off and on, like, you know, part-time, you know, making money on the side, translating stuff. And so I was able to prove my experience, and I got points based on that. And then this was 1995 when I started this process, so I was 33 years old, you know, handsome, all my hair, all my teeth, you know, speaking English, single. And then they do a medical, and then the medical they sent to UK for some reason, I think. And then there's an interview where they talk with you, you know, and make sure your English is really what you say it is. And I remember it was a very pleasant, beautiful Russian girl that spoke flawless English. And she was all smiles, very pleasant. But this was like the last interview. And then she says, would you mind if we talk in English? I said, no problem. And oh yeah, and before that you have to show them you have 5,000 in a foreign bank, kind of like a guarantee that you will not be begging on the streets, right? which at that time was actually illegal based on Russian laws, because Russian citizens were not allowed to have currency in a foreign bank unless they had a permission from the Central Bank of Russia. Like you had to get some kind of a, I don't know, I wouldn't even know how to do that, but somehow I managed to open an account in a foreign bank through the Russian branch. There was like a bank, Russian bank, but it had branches like in Cyprus, you know. And I think that was probably legal, because somehow these guys, they took my money, they put it in Cyprus, they gave me a piece of paper that I showed at the embassy. I said, yep, I got money at this income bank in Cyprus. And so this girl, Russian, beautiful, I don't remember her name, and she's so relaxed, she's so pleasant, and I'm like, my pulse is 120, you know, beats per minute. I'm very nervous because, I don't know, like 18 months before that, I never thought about Canada, right? But then this Larissa and Marina, they dropped that seed of doubt, right? That what are you doing in Russia, right? And so here I am, summer of 1997, I think it was April, and I'm sitting in this embassy room, you know, and at the end everything is cool, and this Russian lady says, welcome to Canada. And I'm telling you, like, I'm crying, you know. I go outside the embassy, and it's right downtown on near famous Arbat, you know, old Arbat, right near metro Kuznetskaya, subway Kuznetskaya station, I think. Right there, like, basically downtown, the tourist area. And I still remember I walk outside, and they have two flags. There's a Russian flag and there's a Canadian flag, you know, the maple leaf. And I remember I just stopped there, and I stood there for probably like 5 minutes just looking at the flag, and just there's tears, you know, flowing down my face. That was probably the happiest day of my life. And I don't exactly remember the name of the airline, but I know it was not a Russian, because at that point, you know, I was so focused on moving to Canada, so I didn't want to have anything to do with Russia. So I think it was either KLM or Air France, because I remember there was stopover, like a layover, where I had to change planes, you know, like the one from Moscow was a smaller plane, and then we switched to a bigger plane that took me over the ocean to Canada. So, and the layover was either in Amsterdam or Paris or Frankfurt, if I used the German airline. And I think because of cost probably, but there was this was August 97, and my plane actually landed in Montreal, Quebec, 700 kilometers east of here, or 400 miles. And that was, I think, Charles de Gaulle International Airport. But that one had no flights to Toronto, where I wanted to end up, because, you know, I don't speak French. Toronto, Ontario was famous for, you know, like, it's a humongous city, like lots of job opportunities, right? So I always wanted to end up somewhere here near Toronto, Ontario. And I could have taken a bus, like a, you know, like a coach from Montreal, but that would have taken a whole day. And so instead I took a small plane, like a local plane. And I remember there was a bus. You had to take a bus, like a special transit bus that goes from one airport to another. So it took me from that big de Gaulle International Airport, took me to this local airport. But before, one important thing happened is that the whole thing in Canada, like what's known as a green card in US, right? In Canada I was a landed immigrant, like that's the word for the permanent resident. You have the right for everything except to vote, right? It's kind of like a green card in US. And so when you land in Canada, and my only documents were the foreign travel passport from Russia, because in Russia you have two passports, one internal and one external, and you're supposed to carry your internal passport everywhere. If cops stop you and you don't have a passport, they can put you in jail for up to, I think, 48 hours. And then I got my foreign passport, like travel passport, which at least had some info in English, whereas the internal passport only has info in Russian. And now we're somewhere near the airport. Yeah, the airport is over there. That's the Pearson International Airport, just west of Toronto. And so when I landed in Montreal, of course, because it was an international flight, so we have to deal with customs, and that was my first point of contact with Canadian customs. And I showed them my Russian travel passport, and I showed them this humongous piece of paper, legal size, which was very awkward to fold. I still remember it was like a legitimate government document, you know, with all kinds of emblems and logos on them, Government of Canada, you know. That was my actual visa. So it was not like a card, it was this humongous piece of paper, you know, like in 19th century. We'll just stop over here. There's Wendy's, and that's my favorite place for some photography. But I know this Wendy's over here, they're closed until 10:30, but there's a runway here. There's a runway. That goes pretty much starts right on the other side of the road, and usually there's people here on the weekend, you know, like kind of like people that like watching airplanes. But like I came here a few times, and quite often it's you know, you never know which runway the planes are using, because it depends on the wind, and then sometimes they have repairs, right? And I'm not sure it was this particular runway, but Montreal is right behind me, where you see that plane is coming. I don't know if it was this big, but that's the beauty of this spot, that you can actually park here and you can watch airplanes, you know. Yeah, so that's Air Canada, right? And I think that's what I was taking from Montreal. So yeah, today is a good day, so that means that runway is open. And so the French guys in Montreal, so they stamped my that humongous piece of paper, and from that point on I became a permanent resident. So once they stamp it, that's it. Your entry into Canada is authorized. And I think I was crying probably again, but unless I was too afraid of these guys, you know, because they're all wearing weapons, you know, like customs, right? And yeah, that's when I took the bus. I took the bus to the local airport, and I flew down here. Okay. And I remember it was the end of the day. I'm pretty sure it was August 18th, 1997, because from Russia you fly west, right? So you stay in the same day, even though it takes, like, the flight was, I think I spent, I don't know, together probably was like 13-14 hours on the plane. and then probably for a few days after that you feel totally sick, right? Because everything is upside down, night, day, you know. It takes a very long time to get used to it. Even though I was like, you know, I was, again, this was 97. I was 35 years old. And now imagine, you land in a foreign alien country, right? I did not know anybody. I was single. I had no friends. I had no girlfriends over here. Nobody was waiting for me. No one was meeting up with me. You know, I had nobody. Like, and I'm carrying, I think I had like 3,000 in cash, and the rest was in traveler's checks that I bought in US. So I'm carrying this little waist pack, 20,000 US. That's all I had with me. Oh, and then this was this 5 grand in Cyprus. That was all my funds, my entire basically life, and a big humongous bag on wheels that I paid too much in Russia, but it was like a very fancy travel bag, like, you know, pretty much what I have now, that I bought like for 30 bucks in Canadian Tire over here, like that. But you know, in Russia everything is expensive, where if you want to buy something made in the West, like in US or something, it's a lot of money, like clothes, everything. And so yeah, I have a suitcase, I think, and I have this, yeah, I had one suitcase, and I had this humongous thing on wheels, and then I had a shoulder bag, and this time there's no customs, right, because it's a local flight, and it's end of the day. I have no idea, but I had 3 things going for me, right? I'm young, ambitious, I'm self-motivated, and I speak fluent English. And it helps when you are not entirely stupid, where you can find information that you need, right? And I go outside in the lobby, and when, you know, everything is done, I pick up my bags, and I still remember there's a machine. There's a machine like an ATM with a screen, and it shows you like local hotels, you know, very cool. And you click on the but you know, the way it worked is it did not show you like available hotels, but you had to pick each one. Like, it showed you a map with hotels around this Pearson International Airport, and you had to check each one to see which one had the available, you know, rooms available. And I remember I was poking, it was very frustrating. I was poking all these hotels, and all of them were booked. Because right next to this area, I think, so that's the airport, right? That was the runway, the way the plane went. So that's west, and that's where I came from. That's where Cambridge is. But somewhere like there, in the south part, like the airport is humongous, right? But the south end of the airport, there's a bunch of hotels, like maybe 10 hotels. And that's what I was checking, but I could not find anything. And then I found one hotel, like further away. That one had rooms available, right? And I called them, I think. I verified that, and then I had no idea how all this public transit worked, and I didn't want to be on the bus so late at night, you know. I think it was like 7 or 8 o'clock. So I called the cab. That was my first experience, calling a yellow cab that took me to the hotel. So this is the airport road. It goes south to north, and the airport is to my left. And so basically now we're just doing a big circle around the airport, because it's like a big rectangular thing. And this is Airport Road, and this is Derry. And we are in, technically it's not even Toronto, it's Mississauga, Ontario, which
on Peel Regional Road 5 for 8 kilometers.
Which is western suburb. Yeah, so that's somewhere behind that plant. That's the airport, and I'm pretty sure that's how we went in a taxi cab, because the hotel, I still remember, it was a Monte Carlo Inn. Monte Carlo Inn. You straight like I stay on this road for like, I don't know, 5 minutes. All right, a quick pit stop at Petro Canada, and I'm ready to roll again. And to understand what I was doing after I booked the hotel, right? So one thing you have to know, that this was back then, and now it's pretty much industrial area. You have all these warehouses, you have trucking companies, you know, you have the airport, right? So it's all industrial. So there's no apartments here.
Turn right onto Dairy Road East, Peel Regional Road 5.
No.
Continue on Peel Regional Road 5 for 1 kilometer.
So basically this is too far from everything, and of course I didn't have a car, right? So the plan was just to go to the hotel for a couple of nights until I find an apartment. And again, I had no idea how the public transit system worked, you know. Usually when I go to a different city, I just use taxi cabs, right? And
500 meters, turn right onto Edwards Boulevard.
let me see. Yeah, I see now they have a Radisson over here. It was not here before. Radisson. There you go. This one over here.
Take the
Well,
next right onto
not
Edwards
this
Boulevard.
one.
Then your destination will be on the
But
right.
this tiny baby of a hotel over here. Now there's another one over here. Now there's Hampton Inn. See? Now there's a whole bunch of hotels. Wait a second. Yeah, I think it was not the Monte Carlo. It was this one. Which
Your
one is?
destination is on the right.
Which one is this one? Yeah, because I thought it was Monte Carlo, which is, you know, that nice, it's like says corporate center. No, I was in this one. 7035. And why I'm saying that, because this is like an older, let me see, I forgot the name of this thing. Oh no, this is Monte Carlo. Monte Carlo Inn. Yeah. But what I do remember about this is that, so the main building is a 2-story building, so they have some more expensive rooms in here. So now I have this fountain. But what's funny is that these guys, I don't know if now they do, but back then they had no elevators, you know. And I have this humongous heavy suitcase and that bag on wheels, right? And I'm like, what the heck, what kind of a hotel is this that they don't have, you know, they don't have any. So I had to drag it, and he gave me a room on the 2nd floor. So this is just a word of advice to people working in the hospitality industry. So this was 1997. It's 2018 now, right? So it's 21 years ago. I still remember how unhappy I was with this hotel, you know. So do you think now I would recommend this hotel to any of my friends? And you know, that's what you get. Oh boy. But now, yeah, now they have much more choice in here. They have this Hampton Inn, they have Radisson. But yeah, that's what it is. I was trying to remember. It was this one, and my window was actually, I forgot, on the one hand there was an empty field, and over here there's where all these trucks are parked. There's like a, I think there's like a little diner somewhere here. Yeah, there was like a little diner, and that's where I went and I had some food. But what I started to say is that to kind of like justify what I was trying to do right after this. So at first I thought I would stay here and look for an apartment. But because I wanted to live somewhere closer to downtown and I didn't have a car and the hotel was expensive. They'll have this, I had this 20 grand US, right? I don't remember how much it was, but it was not cheap. It was like over $100. And so I started looking for a different base of operations, so to speak. So this was all like an offensive campaign. So I was very focused. This was like the goal of my life, to find an apartment. That's it. So one goal. And then when I have the apartment, because I have no documents, right? Like I have the Russian passport and a visa. And once your visa is stamped and you're a legal, full-blown resident of Canada or landed immigrant, then you can go to the Ministry of Transportation over here, or like DOT in the States. You can get your main document, which is driver's license. And like I mentioned before, in Russia, the driver's license never was considered a proper form of ID. And so I was always surprised, when I was watching like American movies or reading, US whodunits, thrillers, that people were always talking about, hey, show me your ID. And somebody shows a driver's license. I'm like, what? Driver's license is not an ID. But then, of course, you arrive here and everything is different. And that's like the most important document you can get, right? And so I needed to find an apartment, and then I would, the goal after that was to get my driver's license. Then I have to go to the Ministry of Social Affairs and get my social. I keep mixing them up. Like it's the second word is different in U.S. and Canada. So one is social insurance number, one is social security number, right? I think in Canada it's insurance. And so that was the second most important document, because you need that little card, like 7-digit number, to get a job, right? And so driver's license. Oh, and then the third most important document is your OHIP, Ontario Health Insurance Plan. And you have to go to another building, Ministry of Health, and get your, looks like a credit card, again, OHIP. It says OHIP. And that's, if you need to go to a doctor or whatever, that covers you for most stuff, because healthcare in Canada is free, except dental and ambulance. So if you're dying, you have to pay for the ambulance. So it's a cool system. But the problem with Canada's healthcare is that there's big waiting lines. So basically, if it's free, but you can die while waiting in line. And so sometimes the government will fly the person to US if it's something really critical, right? And they pay for the operation in the States, because otherwise this person would have died in Canada. So that's the problem with Canadian healthcare. So the healthcare is great, it's good, but if it's something where you cannot wait, like, what's the point? What's the, I'd rather pay personally, but I'd prefer to pay and not die than not pay and die. Like, I don't know, just me maybe. So anyway, so from here, right, we started looking for something closer to downtown. Monte Carlo Inn, still here, 21, what did I say, 13 plus 18, 21 years later, so that means that they're still doing something good. But they lure people in. They don't tell you in the booklet on that computer that I found in the airport that they don't have an elevator, right? No, but I'm serious. My bags were like, I don't know, 50 kilos each. I had all my belongings with me, and I'm just dragging them up these 20 steps. I still remember. So anyway, so I picked up a newspaper. I have no computer, no cell phone, right? So the printed word is the word. So I picked up a newspaper, either Globe and Mail or Toronto Star, and I started looking at rentals. rentals, and I find that the downtown in Toronto, they have a university, right? A big University of Toronto, and of course they have these dormitories, you know, where whatever they're called, like hostel, no, not hostel, like where students live, right? But in the summer, the school is out, and so these buildings stay vacant most of the time. And what they do is, in the summer only, they rent these rooms to anybody who has money, and they're pretty cheap. So basically, it's like a you know, like a college room, and the bathroom and the shower is outside, the kitchen is outside. It's all kind of like kommunalka in Russian, right? It's like you know, where you shared accommodation, basically, right? But the one big selling point for me was that it was in the ad that room came with a telephone. So it came with a telephone, so that was my plan, to get out of this expensive hotel and into something cheaper, and that one was cheaper, much cheaper than this. And it was downtown. And of course I took a cab. I took a cab from here. Well, I called them, I made sure that I had the room. I had no credit cards, nothing. You know, how do you reserve a room? And the same thing here. I could not reserve it from the hotel because I didn't have any credit cards, right? And so I just took a cab here, knowing that they had rooms. And then I think next day, yeah, on the same, I went, had a meal at this diner somewhere here. And it felt kind of weird. It's sort of like American diner, you know, everything is in English. Yeah. No, it's kind of like a big culture shock, you know, when everything 24/7 is in a different language. Even though my English is perfect, right? But back then, you know, you're just fresh from Russia. It's one thing when you use English as a tool for your job, but, you know, there's people around you, subway, you know, on the street, they all speak Russian, right? And then you kind of like get parachuted, so to speak, into this country where there's no Russian whatsoever, unless you go to North York, where there's actually even some stores, which is north suburb of Toronto, where even some stores have signs in Russian, because there's so many Russian, mostly from Israel. Like they moved to Israel, like Jewish Russians, and then they moved to Canada. Because why? Because they say it's too hot, and secondly, there's always war. And so all these Russian Jews, they went to Israel, then they moved to Canada. Okay, so let's go. So from here I took a cab downtown Toronto. I hope, I don't know how I do. I wanted to do an Uber, but it's too expensive because it's too far. From here it's probably like, I don't know, 40 kilometers, 25 miles to downtown Toronto. So we're just gonna drive. If I can stop there, I'll stop. If not, I'll have this thing on my head. I'm gonna do a drive-by. So that was my next stop. So this is all happening within like the first couple of days of my arrival in Canada, and it's still August. Now I think it's August 19th or August 20th, 1997. So this is Queen Elizabeth Way, the one I take in my truck when I go towards Buffalo, New York. But over here we're just going east towards downtown, and this is they did here pretty much what they did in Chicago. You saw me doing that Riverwalk, right, where you can walk alongside the alongside the Chicago River, right? And so here is the same thing. All this near the lake, we're just driving near alongside the lake. All this is embankment, you know, walkways, sidewalks. So you can start here and basically you can bike, walk, and, you know, use a scooter, whatever, and go pretty much all the way to downtown Toronto. And we on College Street. What is this? Bathurst. Yeah, so this is I'm laughing because I remember all these places, because yeah, this is downtown. All they have these banks. There's Scotia Bank over there, all these Royal Bank. They have a church over here, and you can walk around here like for ages. It's not too safe at night. There's always something's happening, but not so much here, but more to the north. But in general, it's much safer than in US. And of course now I'm stuck behind this guy who's trying to turn. Red. Okay, at least I'm the next one. Hybrid electric. You see? No, they have buses that are hybrid electric. And actually the buses here in Toronto, they look pretty much like buses in Chicago, Illinois. Today is a gorgeous day, so 26 Celsius. I think it's about what, 90 degrees. And you see this small car? See, that says parking enforcement. These are the guys that walk around and they ticket you because there's hard to find parking, right? And so but one thing I don't like is that you have to drive on these rails. So you have to share the road with these guys. And of course they always have the right of way. And these were not here when I was here. They didn't have these. These are much longer. A new design, the new look. But over here it's like, see, they have all these shops, you know, coffee shops, people are sitting outside. Public beverage house, the Cloak and Dagger. There's a couple of bikes outside and logo for Guinness beer. Over here we have, I think it's like a fire department or something, old church or something. And I think we're coming towards Spadina. So first it was Bathurst, and then it's Spadina. Yeah, I don't like driving on these rails one bit. So we are 1 mile, 1.6 kilometers. Oh, and you see this? Oh, now it's called Jump. Like over here there's lots of computer places, mostly Chinese, and now it's Jump. It says Mac Premium Reseller. But back in the day, and over here you can buy cheap parts, you can build your own computers. But back in the day, actually I assembled my computer after that. But my first computer in Canada I bought here, but it was called differently. But I'm pretty sure it was this building, and they had Macs, and that's what I bought. I did not believe into laptop computers back then because they were overpriced, weak specs, you know. I like desktop computers, so I bought this older style Mac that I later discovered was discontinued, and I had all kinds of trouble with the software. But that's what I did. But then I think I returned it. And I got a compact laptop, which was like $3,000, you know. Very nice. So this is the area, Spadina and College. There's a Chinatown, either south or north, I forgot. But this is like driving here is like driving in New York City. Lots of traffic. Well, not that much, but used to this, right, in my car. I don't like driving like this. Oops, the guy almost went on the rail, almost kissed that streetcar. What do I hear? Bremar College, Institute for Christian Studies. And we're coming up to the real, you know, downtown, like Yonge Street, University Avenue. You guys will see in a second. So yeah, that's what I figured would be more interesting to people, you know, instead of walking around with my camera. I'm gonna do this kind of like, yeah, like a trip down memory lane and show you the Canada I learned to love, because this became my new motherland, right? And then after 3 years, what's cool about Canada and the immigration system back then, I think now it's different. Now it's not easy at all. But back then, you get this landed immigrant thing, right? The visa. You come to the country, you get all your documents, and then after 3 years you can apply for citizenship. And the only condition was, of course, that you don't get into jail, you know, during this 3 years, and you have to stay in the same location. Basically, you have to show 3 years at the same, like Ontario, the same province, right? And I think I applied after like 4 years because I didn't see urgency, and that's when I got my citizenship card, and I went and I got my Canadian passport. Yeah, and these are the streetcars I remember, these ones. They were usually single, just single car, and so they're still here. This is McCall Street, and this whole area is called Toronto's Discovery District. Lots of cute girls walking around. Avenue. Somewhere here is Embassy of US. Like, this is a good area to walk as well. So these are like, so I'm going east, like straight east, from west to east, right, on this College Street. And now we're coming real close towards my destination. So this is Bay Street, and next one is
200 meters, turn left onto Yonge Street.
No, I'm not turning left anywhere, because this is where I was, I'm pretty sure. There's a police station here. So this is Yonge Street, right? Yonge Street.
Take the next left onto Yonge Street, then your destination will be on the left.
No, we're gonna kill it. Because I'm pretty sure, so actually College Street ends over here at Yonge Street, and Yonge Street is the longest street in the world, and this is where all the pedestrian traffic happens. You know, you can walk here for hours. Lots of shops on both sides, so I want to go there, but I think it was somewhere here. There's no stopping, no parking. Or 3 to 7, okay, no parking. So it was somewhere here. No, wait, power to Toronto Hydro. So like I said, it was let me just put my lights on so they don't give me a ticket. It It was maybe this one. So basically one of these buildings, like I said, I think this is already called Carlton Street. Yeah, college ends at Young Street, and this is Carlton, east of the same street but just east of Young. It's called Carlton. And somewhere right here, one of these big buildings, it was I think over there where the flags are, I see something says university, like on the left, and that's where I got that room, you know, and that's where I spent, I don't know, probably 3-4 days, because it was cheap, you know. There was lots of co-eds around, you know. Funny times. But no, it was not a fun mission. It was kind of like I was very set and focused on finding an apartment, you know. And so I would be making calls all day, then I would walk out and look at places, but some of them, and that's when I discovered that at Parkdale area there was so many rental properties in there, you know. And so eventually, see, I went to look at one, and I found one across the street. And this is the area where I spent probably, I don't know, 3 years. My first 3 years in Canada. Why? Because that's this is Parkdale. Parkdale, all these buildings were here, and this is all rental, and you see like newly renovated bachelor, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom. But the problem with these apartments was, see, all this street is all rental apartments. But the problem with all these rental apartments was that they, first of all, they were expensive. They were like $700-800, you know. Well, maybe 600 Canadian for a bachelor. And I was trying to be smart, you know, so that, because I had no job, right, I had to find something cheap so that my money could last until I developed a new income, right? And also these guys, whenever you check into one of these, you have to give them a deposit, right? You have to give them a big deposit, like 1 month deposit. And again, that's another thing that I didn't want to do. And so this is Jameson, and then we have King, and then we have Queen, and that's our goal, is Queen and Jameson or Lansdowne. And I walked here all over the place. Actually, a couple of times I even drove my truck here. But basically nothing changed over here. It's like the same buildings, but now we're going into area with with private houses, like standalone houses. And that's what I discovered when I started looking at you know, rental apartments, at the ads, right? So this is Queen. So this is kind of like downtown, I don't know, New York City. This would be perfect for you know, like street photography, stuff like that. And you can take a streetcar from here. You can take a streetcar, and you have to share the road all the way to downtown. Like downtown is behind me, like towards my back. Okay, so now we're looking. Okay, this is I think it's Lansdowne. Where are all the signs? No, Dowling Avenue. Here we go, Dowling Avenue. But alright, so it's all one way. I have to go left somewhere here. Yeah, okay, so this is, can I turn left in here? I think I can. Yeah, so it's village of Parkdale. Church. Well, somewhere here that there was a grocery store. There's a cop in there. I need to go in here. So all this area over here, I remember somewhere here, I think this building, there was like a hospital for sick people. Well, not a hospital, I mean, what do you call it? But this is the area, you see, I mean, mental, like hospice. But you see all these houses, I remember I went in here and lots of them have rooms for rent, right? All these old houses, you know, they're very big. They've been here for centuries, and I remember walking here and okay, just need to find a way to cross towards Dowling, because that one is one way going that way. And it's like, this is the area basically where my Canadian history really started. I remember walking over here, it's like beautiful. So now we're back at I think it's King Street. Yeah, King Street. Oh, and now they have these new streetcars. They have these new streetcars. Okay, and when the streetcar stops, you know, there's no traffic, right? You know that all the cars have to stop. And here we go. So this is the Dowling. So basically I came to look at the apartment on this side. It was like a rental accommodation, and not these ones, but I was looking at a house. It was inside a house, and she had like 5 or 6, you know, rooms. But this is it. Yeah, 5 or 6 rooms. But I didn't like them. They were like basement stuff like that. And then I look across the street from the window, and I see like one of these somewhere here. Not this one. I remember it had some like a towers. Oh yeah, like this one, I think. Yeah, okay, I think it was, yeah, on the corner of this Laxton. But there's no parking anywhere here. You cannot park, there's no parking. But yeah, so it's still here. So I went to look at that place somewhere here, either this one or this one. They were really ugly, you know. And then I saw across the street there was a sign here, it says room for rent, and it was like 3 stories. It was a Hungarian lady that bought that house, and she just lived off, you know, rentals. And yeah, so the entrance was back from here. Maybe let's go this way, because it's all one way. And this was kind of like, again, it was a shared accommodation. It was shared accommodation. And I remember one guy was like from Serbia or something, and he bought Hyundai, and he was doing a maintenance over here in the backyard where she had some parking. Yeah, that's the backyard of this place. And I was on the top, I was on the 2nd floor. Yeah, we're here. And I was on the 2nd floor, and then she moved me to the room upstairs on the top floor got vacant, and it was a really big, like a bachelor's, but like with, you know, your own bathroom, your own kitchen. It was like a luxury, and it had a very nice view, you know. Very good view, and that's where I spent, I think she charged me like 400 bucks Canadian a month for that shared accommodation. But you had to share showers and kitchen, right? Like again, like a kommunalka in Russian. All right, so let's get back to the freeway. So I'm back on Jameson Avenue, and there's an entrance to QEW. So Parkdale, Ontario, a village of Parkdale. So those were the days. The days of dreams, job searching, soul searching, because I had no idea what I wanted to do. Well, I did have an idea, but I was trying a few different ones. See what sticks.